Okay, let's dive in. You've done all the hard yards, the research, the data analysis. Maybe you've even got those figures looking perfect. But then, well, then there's the discussion section.
Ah, yes, the discussion.
And anyone who's navigated academic publishing knows it's way more than just wrapping things up, right? It's really where your findings get their voice.
Absolutely. It's where you tell the so what story, you connect the dots for the reader, and really shape their understanding of your work's impact.
It really is crucial, but let's be honest, it can be tricky. We've all seen discussions that just sort of rehash the results.
Or they end with a really vague kind of, well, more research is needed, which is true, but not very helpful on its own.
Exactly. It leaves you wondering, okay, but what does this actually mean? That lack of clear interpretation is such a missed opportunity.
A huge missed opportunity. The discussion should be persuasive, insightful. It needs to clearly stake your claim for contribution.
Which is why, for this deep dive, we've been digging into some really practical advice from the Instagram account, Akademik Practices. They offer a great framework.
Yeah, some really solid points there.
So our mission today is to unpack their perspective step by step. We want to pull out those key insights that can help you listening right now make your next discussion section stronger, more persuasive, and just, well, scientifically deeper.
It's about moving beyond just reporting facts, isn't it? It's about crafting a compelling argument based on those facts.
Okay, so let's kick things off. The source starts right at the beginning. What's the real purpose of the discussion section? Get this wrong. And you're already on shaky ground.
Precisely. And their number one point, the most critical one, is this. Its main job is not just repeating your results.
Right. You did that already in the results section.
Exactly. That part's done. The discussion is for interpretation and synthesis. The source really emphasizes this is where you, the expert on your study, explain what the findings actually mean.
So connecting your specific results to the bigger picture in the field.
Yes. And they break down what that interpretation looks like. First, you absolutely have to connect back to your original research questions.
Makes sense. Did you answer what you set out to answer?
You'd be surprised how often that's not explicitly stated. You need to say clearly, our finding that X supports our hypothesis, or these results address research question 1 by showing Z. Don't make the reader hunt for it.
Okay, so circle back to your own study's goals first. And then you mentioned linking outwards.
Yes, linking outwards to the ongoing conversation. The source stresses comparing your findings with what others have already published. You're not working in a vacuum.
So how do your results stack up against previous studies? Do they agree, disagree, offer a new angle?
Exactly. This is where you go beyond just the literature review in the intro and actually engage with those studies in light of your new results.
You might say something like, our results align with Smith's work, but interestingly, they contrast with Chen's findings, possibly because.
Precisely that kind of comparison. And you explore why there might be differences.
Okay, in the third part of interpretation they mentioned, the implications.
Ah, the so what. This
Yeah.
is so important, and like you said, often gets a bit shortchanged. The source argues you must spell out the broader significance.
What do the findings mean for theory, for practice?
Both. Do they support or maybe challenge existing theories? And what are the real-world takeaways? If it's a study on, say, consumer behavior, what should marketers do differently?
Got it. So understanding that core purpose, interpret, connect, imply is really step one. It changes your whole mindset.
Fundamentally, you shift from just reporting to explaining significance. If you constantly ask yourself, so what? While writing, you're likely heading in the right direction.
Okay, mindset shifted. Point 2 from Akademik Practices then tackles that common mistake, directly just summarizing the results again.
Yes, they're very firm on this. Resist that temptation. Your results section did that job. The discussion needs to use that space to explain the importance and the meaning.
So instead of saying Group A scored higher than Group B, Piezo 5,
You'd say something more like, the finding that Group A significantly outperformed Group B is noteworthy because it suggests. And then you dive into why it matters. What does that difference actually represent?
and this is where the source brings in those analytical questions, right? Like, what do these findings tell us that we didn't know before?
Exactly. What's the core new insight? Is it confirming something that was uncertain, challenging an old idea, finding a new link? You need to highlight that novelty. This study provides the first evidence linking X and Y in this specific context.
Okay, but what happens when your results are, well, a bit odd? Or maybe they fly in the face of what everyone else found? That feels like a tricky spot.
It can feel tricky, but the source advises tackling those surprising or contradictory results head on. Don't try to hide them.
Really? Why is that?
Because they're often the most interesting part of your study. If results are unexpected, the discussion is your chance to explore why. Offer potential explanations.
So you'd talk about maybe differences in methods or the specific group you studied, or maybe even limitations in your study or theirs.
Absolutely. Engaging thoughtfully with unexpected findings shows real critical thinking. It adds analytical depth. It's not a weakness. It's an opportunity to explore the nuances.
That's a much better way to look at it. Turn the unexpected into an analytical strength. Okay, so we've interpreted, highlighted importance. Next up, from the source. Formally linking back to the literature. We touched on it, but let's get into the mechanics.
Right. This is about firmly placing your study within the existing academic conversation. The source insists on direct, explicit comparisons. Bring those studies you cited earlier back into the discussion, but this time in relation to your specific findings.
So actually saying things like, consistent with Jones 2020, we found X. However, unlike Patel 2018, we didn't observe Y, which could be due to.
That's exactly it. You're actively mapping your results onto the known landscape. And the source points out this isn't just, ticking a box. It has real benefits.
What kind of benefit?
Well, firstly, it massively boosts your study's credibility. It shows you understand the context. Secondly, it demonstrates your command of the field. You're showing you know the literature and can integrate your new findings meaningfully.
It signals that you're a knowledgeable player in that research area.
Precisely. You're saying, here's my contribution, and here's exactly how it relates to what we thought we knew. It's not just adding another data point. It's showing how that data point fits or even changes the bigger picture.
Okay, building on that link to the literature, the source then really pushes us to articulate the implications. This is where what gets fully fleshed out.
It really is. The argument is that every study has implications. Even if they seem small or very specific, they might be theoretical, they might be practical, or both. Your job in the discussion is to spell them out. Don't make the reader do the work.
So if my study was on, say, a new teaching technique for maths anxiety, what kinds of implications should I be thinking about?
Okay, so theoretically. Does it support or maybe challenge existing models of maths, anxiety, or learning? Does it suggest a new mechanism? That's the theoretical side.
And practically.
Practically. Who should care? What should teachers do? Should curriculum designers consider this? Should students be encouraged to use this technique? You need to state the concrete takeaways for relevant groups.
So you're making it super clear why this research matters and who it matters to.
Yes. The source is really clear on this. Specifying these concrete contributions is what gives your article relevance and value. It transforms an interesting finding into something potentially impactful.
Okay. Now, something else that's crucial but can feel awkward, acknowledging limitations. No study's perfect. How does the source suggest handling this?
It frames it as a sign of strength, actually,
Yeah.
of academic integrity. Being upfront about limitations doesn't sink your paper. It actually makes it more credible, paradoxically.
At least there's a skillful way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. The source says, be candid about the weaknesses. Small sample, limited scope, methodological constraints. State them clearly. But, and this is key, don't use language that sounds overly apologetic or completely undermines your findings. Avoid stuff like, a major flaw of this study was.
And it's not just listing them, is it? It's about explaining their potential impact.
Exactly that. Explain how a specific limitation might have influenced the results or their interpretation. So not just small sample size, but rather the relatively small sample size limits the generalizability of these findings, suggesting caution when applying them to broader populations. You connect the flaw to its potential consequence.
Okay, that makes sense. And this feels like a natural bridge to the next point.
Yeah.
Using limitations to suggest future research.
It's the perfect transition, and the source highly recommends it. A strong discussion doesn't just end things, it opens new doors. By identifying limitations, you're basically highlighting unanswered questions that future work can tackle.
So if a limitation was using only self-report measures?
Then a suggestion for future research would be to use observational data or maybe physiological measures alongside self-reports to get a fuller picture.
Got it. And the source sees this as showing academic maturity.
Yes, it shows you understand research is a process, an ongoing conversation. Your study is a contribution, but not the final word. It helps build a research agenda for the field, and maybe even for yourself.
That seems really useful for the researcher too, actually. Planning next steps.
For sure. But the crucial advice here from the source is make these suggestions specific. And make sure they derive directly from your findings or the limitations you just discussed.
So no more generic, more research is needed endings.
Please, no. That's the vague conclusion we want to avoid. Your study should generate specific, testable questions. If you found an interesting correlation, suggest research to explore causality. If you found an unexpected pattern, suggest research to understand why it occurred.
Make it concrete, make it connected. Got it.
Okay.
Okay, final point from the source. Is it something relevant to all writing? The language itself.
Yes, how you say things in the discussion matters hugely. The source recommends a style that's clear, analytical, but also engaging.
So maybe ease up on this super dense jargon unless it's absolutely necessary.
Right. Clarity is key. You're communicating complex ideas, so use precise language, but avoid unnecessary complexity or jargon that might obscure your meaning. The goal is to help the reader understand your insights easily.
You want them to follow your argument and appreciate the significance of your work.
Exactly. Invite them in, make them think. You want them to finish the discussion feeling like they've learned something important, not feeling confused or exhausted. Clear, compelling writing is how you make your contributions stick.
Wow, okay. That's a really thorough guide. So to quickly recap the key takeaways from the academic practices source, the main job of the discussion is interpretation and synthesis, not repetition.
Right. Explain the importance of your findings, especially any surprising ones.
Connect your work explicitly to the existing literature, show how it fits.
And clearly spell out the implications, both theoretical and practical. Who needs to know this, and why?
Acknowledge limitations, but do it skillfully, explain their potential impact, and use them to propose specific future research directions.
Now wrap it all up in clear, engaging, analytical language.
The source really makes the case that the discussion is where your voice as a researcher truly emerges, where you make your unique contribution clear.
Absolutely. Following these steps can really elevate your paper from just a report into a valuable piece of scientific dialogue that actually resonates. It's where the research comes alive.
This deep dive definitely highlights just how much potential sits in that final section. It's not just tying up loose ends. It's really the intellectual heart of the paper in many ways.
It truly is.
So here's a final thought to mull over, sparked by this discussion on interpretation and implications. How might consciously focusing on the so what and what next questions right from the start of your research when you're designing this study actually change your entire approach, not just how you write that final section? Something to think about for your next project.